Okay, so here we are talking about transplanting, and really thought this was an important topic for us to wrap up on because we're getting we're presumably most of us are getting to do this, and as well, it really can make or break the success of your season. So I wanted to talk about this, and we're going to go over some best practices, of course, from a regenerative lens. We're going to be speaking to what we want to be doing, and then we'll make sure that there's lots of room for Q&A at the end to Sue's point where she wanted to be able to ask questions. We already did the intros, so I'll start with the quick recap, which of always important, and I really hope that if you've been here a few times, you're able to essentially do the recap, and I would absolutely love if you share this information with your friends, your family. I think sharing the good news, the hopefulness about regenerative growing is really something that we can all do as we face the climate crisis. And it's important that people feel excited and motivated and appreciate that when we look after the biology in our soil and the microbes and we work with Mother Nature instead of using pulls, that not only are we going to grow healthier plants, but in fact, healthier food, healthier humans, and ultimately a healthier planet, because it's those microbes that really pull all the carbon out of the air and put it back into the soil where it belongs. They're the only ones that are able to do that. And part of the reason they're so effective at doing that is because they're talking with the plant, and when they release these enzymes, they're helping to create humus, this language that the plants and the microbes speak in together through exudates. The exudates are made of carbon, and it's the carbon that is getting locked in the soil. So every time a plant works with a microbe, not only is it getting the nutrients it needs that it otherwise simply wouldn't have access to, it is in fact also storing carbon in the soil. So pulling it out as carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and putting it in the ground. So that makes me really excited, and I hope you can appreciate that there's just so many reasons that we want to be looking after soil health, and we're making the ecosystem healthier year in and year out. And I know everyone enjoyed last week's session with Kat, where she was talking about all the wonderful herbs that are available, and that it's not just about culinary herbs, but there's so many medicinal herbs, and that having these plants is really critical to having a regenerative ecosystem, because one of the reasons is the diversity, and that means diversity in the soil, but also above ground when we're thinking of pollinators, and again the ecosystem as a whole and how it's working together. So hopefully you caught that. Oh, I did want to mention, I meant to say to Sue and as well everyone, that these webinars are going to be available. In fact, many of them already are available on the website. I'm sure Kat can throw that link in the chat. And about half of them, I think we're up to number 7 or 8, have been loaded, and the rest of them are forthcoming shortly. So you will be able to catch up on the ones that you haven't seen. So Kat's herb session last time is definitely worth catching if you weren't available. Okay, so when we're talking about transplanting, what we really want to be looking at here is first how we're going to prepare our soil. And in traditional or in the past, we used to think that would be a lot of tilling. You'd want to work the soil. People would use rototillers or a broad fork, or anything really that they could, shovels to dig and turn over the soil, to loosen it up in preparation of then being able to dig a hole to transplant, but also then assuming that that's going to make it better or easier for the roots to then grow on that transplant. What we know now, of course, because we're following regenerative principles, is that every time we dig in the soil, we are in fact doing more damage than we are good. And so this certainly goes in terms of how we're preparing our beds or our containers or our indoor pots uh, in anticipation of transplanting. So what we like to do, which is really, I think, one of the easiest and most accessible regenerative methods, is to use solarization. And this is where you have ideally a heavy dark tarp. It definitely has to be a black or dark colored tarp that you lay down. In this case, we're talking about on a bed. So you could probably apply it to certainly raised beds and larger containers, in fact. And where you're going to use the heat of the sun and the intensity of the sun to essentially kill any weeds or anything that you're concerned about on the top of the soil. And this process does take a number of weeks, and it is more effective during the warmer months and also when we have more light. So it's not necessarily going to be the best option, for example, for September if you're getting ready to transplant a fall crop. But certainly, the other nice thing about it is it's really quite easy. And so it's not a lot of work. And I often say that, working with regenerative principles and working with Mother Nature is often an easier, or let's say we're maximizing our return in terms of the effort and resources that we're putting into it. So in this case, what you would be looking for is a large dark tarp or piece of plastic that is big enough for your bed or your container. And the critical piece of this is that you do need that piece of tarp to stay down. So I live up in Hockley Valley, which is the second, well, we're on top of a hill. It's a high part of Ontario. We get a lot of wind. So we do have to really anchor those. And we found what works best for us is, large size rocks, hand size sort of stones. However, that's not available to everyone. So think ahead about what you can use, what you can find around your house. It may even be something like a 2-liter jug filled with water. There's lots of options, of course, but if the tarp blows open and you don't realize it, then this method isn't going to work to prepare your bed. In terms of other options, in terms of how you can prepare your bed, you could, any weeds, snip them right at the base of the soil and then allow that material to mulch on top of the bed. You would, again, want to be doing that a few weeks ahead because that green material that's allowed to mulch is going to be high in nitrogen. And if it were to be left there when you transplanted your seedlings, the microbes essentially are more focused on degrading that green material than they will be on helping and feeding your plant. It also throws off the carbon nitrogen ratio in your soil for that time period because it's very high in nitrogen, the green material. So you want to let that decay for a couple of weeks, mulch, become brown. It can still be there as a cover. In fact, that's great, but we don't want it to be that fresh green. All right, so in terms of your containers, the key piece there, of course, we've talked about it before, is the drainage. If the proper container should be open on the bottom. If that's not possible, then you're going to want to have some kind of drainage substitute or substrate. We really recommend the biochar because it holds the moisture and gives it back when it's needed, and it provides condo units for the microbes, but you can also use rocks or even wood chips. There's a variety of substrate materials you can use. So I did quickly want to talk about the difference between store-bought and homegrown seedlings, and that if you are using both, you will want to sort of give them slightly different preparation. And that's because when we do purchase seedlings from the store, most of the hardening off has already been done. Likely they've been sitting in a greenhouse for their whole life. So they've been exposed to natural sun. They've likely been watered on a regular schedule, and the chances are they're further along than the seedlings that are better started, perhaps in some ways. However, the downside to a store-bought seedling is it could be too far gone. So if it was started too early and the roots are now growing out of that container, that's going to indicate that the plant is already root bound. And at that point, damage has already been done. Certainly, it doesn't mean you can't buy that plant and still, have a very productive yield from it, but it is going to reduce the ability in some way, because there's been a period where that plant hasn't been able to grow and access the nutrients it needs. So ideally, you're buying seedlings that don't have their roots really coming out of the bottom of the pot. Homegrown, often have been grown a little bit more delicately. They've been babied, they've been hand grown, not mass produced in a big greenhouse commercial operation. And so with homegrown seedlings, we often need to harden them off for a longer period of time. And what this means is that when we're putting them outside and bringing them back in, we want to do it over a longer time period. We also want to make sure that initially we're putting those plants outside when it's cloudy. And nothing will hurt a new seedling, especially one that's never been in the sun, more than even a couple of hours, even an hour or two of direct sunlight can totally burn your seedling. So it's really critical for those first few days that you're bringing your homegrown seedlings outside, that you're going to be allowing, making sure that there's cloud cover. Of course, if it's a really bright sunny day, what are you going to do? You're going to bring them out really, really early in the day, or once the sun is setting. And that's what we were talking about. So in this case, we also want to be looking at the timing of our transplant. So certainly some of you probably have already really hardcore have started transplanting your cold weather crops. So our leafy greens, our brassicas, those of you that have access to some kind of like a greenhouse setup or a hoop house may very well be growing other things as well. Certainly what we want to keep in mind is that certain plants can handle that cooler weather, but heat lover plants, which is the majority of our fruiting crops, peppers, eggplants, tomatoes, of course, really can't manage any kind of really cold weather. So take a look, make sure, we've talked about it in past sessions, make sure you're looking at the zone map that's put out by the Canadian government that says when your last frost date is, because it can vary significantly even within close proximity. Like I said, we're sort of high up, so our last frost date is later than even sort of 15 minutes down the road. So I think Kat can probably pull that up and throw that in the chat as well if you haven't had a chance to take a look at that. As we mentioned, when it becomes time to do your transplanting, you've hardened off your seedlings, or you're confident from buying them that they're ready to be outside, you do want to pick up a warmer day, ideally a day that is overcast. Again, the plant is going to be in a little bit of shock when this happens. And so if it's overcast, it's just allowed that much reprieve as it settles into its new home. When it comes to working with plants, essentially everything you do, you ideally is done early in the morning. And this is really critical because this is when the plant has the most amount of moisture, and it's absorbed a lot of the water from the soil overnight, and a lot of that water has been transported up into the upper parts of the plant. And as soon as that sun comes up and the day starts moving on, that water is draining out of the plant, going back into the roots, and then ultimately, in some cases, going back into the soil as well. So when you're working with plants, the early morning hours is always your best bet for whatever you're doing. In this case, we also want to take a quick look at what the weather forecast is looking like coming down the road. We wouldn't want, a big windstorm or some kind of significant weather event to be happening tomorrow, because again, these seedlings are going to be really quite delicate for a number of days, in fact, a week at least, where they're not well secured in the soil yet. In terms of how deep you want to place your seedling, it really is dependent on the size of that root ball. And what's critical here is that if the hole that you create is too small, then you are effectively suffocating the plant's root systems. However, if the hole is too big, then you're going to run into other problems, which means that the plant's not going to be well secured. You're going to have to fill it in quite a bit, and ultimately you're damaging more of that ecosystem than you have to. So it's really critical to have your plant with you when you're digging the hole. The other important piece here is that the worm manure, whatever biological additive you are adding, needs to be added in the hole, or ideally is added in the hole, and before you place your seedling in the hole. So you want your hole to be a little bit bigger than the root ball, because you are going to be putting, in this case, we recommend a handful of the worm manure in the hole first. That's because, of course, the worm manure or any kind of biological inoculant has that microbial life that needs to work with the roots, right? It needs to communicate and provide the on-demand delivery of nutrients or first aid or whatever it is that plant needs. And so when you can put the worm manure in the hole first and then place the seedling on, it's directly in contact with the root system. And one of the benefits of that is that plant shock is going to be reduced. So like I said, it's a bit disruptful to the plant that we're anytime you change the environment. And so in this case, what's been shown is that the plant recovers more quickly when it has the microbial partners to work with to get those on-demand nutrients. And then ultimately it's able to go from first aid or let's say recovering and recuperating stage to vegetative and growth stage. So it's going to happen more quickly, which ultimately is going to increase the length of your season. The less time that the plant is spent sort of in dormancy trying to recover, and the more time it's growing and producing, ultimately it's going to be a better, bigger, healthier plant. So the other piece that's really important to appreciate here with the worm manure, any biological inoculant, is that, again, because of that synergistic relationship, you really aren't doing yourself any benefit to add the worm manure in advance. And that's because, especially if that soil were to get wet, the microbes are going to be reawakened, they're going to rehydrate, come out of dormancy, but there isn't going to be a plant or those roots ultimately to feed the microbes. And so some of them will go back to sleep in dormancy, but some of them are going to die off because the conditions, the food that they need simply isn't ready and waiting. So of course, if you have perennial crops, if there's already plants in the ground then nearby, then that's less of a concern. But certainly, if this is a new bed or there's no other plants in that particular area, you really want to be adding your worm manure at the same time as roots are going in the ground as you're doing your transplant. Another ultimately important piece to appreciate is how critical watering is. How critical watering is for those first few days. And again, that's because, as we know, microbes live in water, and they can only do this job of helping the plant when there is sufficient moisture in the soil. So that's why you'll hear it from everyone. That those first few days, that week, that critical period after you've transplanted, you want to maintain consistent moisture levels in your soil, because that's really going to ensure that the plant is going to overcome whatever transplant stress has been induced by that move. The other piece that we always talk about is keeping our soil covered. So this would also be when you'd want to mulch your soil if it hasn't been mulched already. And remember, if you did use the solarization technique, you will have removed all the soil cover. So it will have made it easier to do your transplant, but then you need to make up for some kind of cover. So maybe you're going to let the weeds grow back, which is great. But perhaps if you want to do something preventative, you're putting down a mulch, and that's also going to help regulate the soil temperature. A cover crop would be another great opportunity, because then you're picking and choosing what's going in and how you're improving your soil over the long term. Couple tips to keep in mind when you are doing your transplant, and the first is that we live in Canada, so we can have frost any day of the year. It's entirely possible and has happened, I'm sure, if I were to look at the records. And so you do always want to know what you have available to use as a frost blanket. And certainly, of course, with the climate crisis, the weather is totally unpredictable. So having an idea, or even better, having a set of supplies that can be thrown into action. In this case, a cover for frost, even something as simple as a bed sheet, or you could, of course, use a tarp or plastic, can work really well. And I remember learning this. I thought it was really fascinating that the reason that it works, it's not so much that the tarp or the bed sheet's holding in the heat, because of course, bed sheet especially is very porous. But what's happening here is that when you provide plants with a cover from the atmosphere, essentially you're reducing the amount of stuck from our universe that pulls heat off of the field crops, off of our plants at all times, and especially at nighttime. So I don't know, this really blew my mind when I learned this, but basically the universe is sucking heat away from us. And if we can put a layer that stops that from happening, this is another reason why greenhouses keep plants warmer at night. Ultimately what you're doing is, by a few degrees, increasing the ability for that air to stay a little bit warmer. So make sure you have something to cover your seedlings. And again, you don't want it to be sitting on your seedlings. You want to have hoops or some way to keep the structure over your plants. And the other thing to keep in mind when you are transplanting is to watch what happens in those first few critical weeks. So, of course, you should be out there with monitoring moisture levels and keeping an eye out for what's going on. I remember hearing once that the best fertilizer is a farmer's footsteps, which ultimately means that it's really being out with your plants that that is ultimately going to have you grow the best possible way you can, because that's when you're able to see regularly, you're more fine-tuned to the changes, the subtleties that happen that can indicate that something's off, and you can catch it earlier ultimately. So in this case, especially once we've in recent transplanting, we want to be looking, are there pests? If there are pests, are they going equally after all plants, or are they only going after one or two of the plants? If they're only going after one or two, this is actually a better sign, because it means that for whatever reason they identified that those plants were weaker, and they were able to ultimately it's survival of the fittest, Mother Nature doing her job and culling the weaker plants, and so you have a good chance of saving the others. Of course, if your pests are going after all your plants, then you need to implement some reactive measures. Row cover is a really good idea. Again, if you start seeing them, then you want to have something transparent and light that you can put over your transplants to make sure that any inbound insects can be prevented in that case. So keeping a close eye on your transplants for the first couple weeks especially is really going to do you a lot of benefit. Oh, okay. This is the Healthy Planet Launch. So that I'm going to wrap up the transplant there. I think it looks like there's some questions, so I want to make sure we have lots of times for questions. And I also was hoping you guys could help us out. We have a really exciting thing going on for us right now, which is that we recently got into being carried at a number of the Healthy Planet locations. So we're at 13 different retail Healthy Planets across the Golden Horseshoe. And we really, to make this successful and to make sure that we're able to continue to work with them, we're encouraging people to share this. We're running a social media contest giveaway for $100 gift cards to Healthy Planet. And then, of course, we're encouraging people to go into the stores and ideally purchase a bag of the worm manure. I know a lot of you have won a bag, so maybe you want to buy one for a friend, and then tell them about regenerative growing while you're at it. So, in terms of homework, we're sort of looking to what I'm looking to is when and what would be useful in terms of working with this group again. That I would love to know about that. And we thought we'd give you guys a special promo. So usually we do 10% off for the website, but today we're going to do the 20% off for all items at soilbooster.ca. But again, that's only valid until 11:59 tonight. So you're going to use code JGG20, and that's going to save you 20% off your order at soilbooster.ca. So with that, I'm going to stop my share. And I will also mention, if you didn't see in the email, that we are going to be transitioning the emails from the Jocelyn's Growing Group over to our biweekly newsletter. So if you would not like to be on that newsletter, you can email me or email Kat or direct message Kat right now, and or reply to the email I sent this morning. So on that note, Kat, am I correct in thinking there's a few different questions here?
That's right. So I was answering a few questions throughout the chat. Then there was one that I haven't gotten to yet. It's, can you please explain the many types of outdoor row cover to put over seedlings in terms of thickness, opacity to light, and permeability to rain and watering?
Okay, so I can do a little intro, but probably the best option would be to look at one of the, so Kat, if you want to look up, I think is it Dubois Agriculture that we use. They're Canadian, and that's where we buy our row covers. And I am not an expert in row covers, so I can't remember offhand. There is a grading system. And like you said, so they are graded on, first of all, how much light they let through to the plant. And you can get a range depending on if you want as much light as possible, which is what you would ideally want for a heat lover, versus much less light, which is what you would be looking to do if you were growing cool weather crops in the middle of the summer in direct sunlight. So there is lots of range. The other piece, of course, is the amount of moisture that they let through. It does tend to reduce the amount of rain that, oh, great, Kat found the link there. It does reduce the amount of moisture that your crop's able to access through the rain, because some of it is rolling off the side of the rain cover, the row cover. I believe there are different options for that as well, but it is something you want to take into account if you don't have in-ground watering. And the other thing to keep in mind with row covers is that you do want to, you'll likely have to purchase the hoops, which are sort of the flexi plastic that you would bend and stick into both sides. And that those do have to be spaced at quite a regular interval. I believe it's every 2 feet, but I'm sure there's different things you can do there. So they are quite costly is the other thing. I remember being very surprised when I ordered some. But the nice thing is they last year in, year out. And they have a variety of uses. So one of the other ways I've used covers is actually as a temporary mulch. So for example, in our hoop house, a couple of years ago, we were having a lot of weed pressure, and it was drowning out. I don't know, what were we growing? It must have been some ground cover or a creeping crop, because so what we ended up doing was actually using the row cover, because they're quite long, usually like 20 feet, I think, at least, and wrapping it around the base of the plant and using it really just to as a mulch, as a temporary mulch, to hold down and suppress the weed. So there's lots of cool stuff that you can do with it. And I'm sure Dubois will have much more thorough information about all that.
Okay, thanks. I've also
Yep.
just pasted some information from the internet into the chat for a little more detail on 5 different types of row covers. And then Wally asked, how often would I add worm manure top dressing during the spring and summer? How much? Is it a handful at the base of the plant?
Exactly. So that's what we recommend, Wally. So you've been paying attention. That a handful at the base of the plant, and then water well. And then what that's going to do is the microbes are going to leach down to the root system. How often is dependent on a variety of factors. So the nice thing is, first of all, there's no such thing as too much, in that you're never going to hurt your plant. There is a general rule that if, for example, you were mixing a soil, 30% worm manure would be the maximum efficacy you're going to get from that biological inoculant. You could add more. It's not going to hurt, but it's not going to do anything better. So in that case, we'd kind of be wasting it. In terms of top dressing specifically, it really does depend on how the plant is doing initially. If the worse off it is when it starts, you want the more frequent you want applications until it's really come back to be thriving again. So in that case, I would go so far as to say once a week. Once it's come back to a place where you feel confident that it's growing well, the leaves aren't yellow anymore, it doesn't look like it's dying anymore, then you can go to a monthly regime or even a seasonal regime. So it does depend a little bit on what your goals are. well, it depends on a few things. What are your goals? What kind of time and effort do you have? What kind of resources do you have? The microbial partners that the plants need is going to change based on the stage of the life cycle that the plant is at. So, for example, annual plants benefit from a more frequent application because their life cycle changes more rapidly than, for example, a perennial plant. It also changes based on environmental factors significantly. And so that includes moisture levels, drought conditions, what kinds of things are happening in the environment. And, really, is the plant getting stressed out? So that would also relate to things like pests and pathogens. So it's one of those things where the more frequent you can apply it, the more likely you're going to ensure that the plant always gets what it needs. Because I think we talked about it, like diversity winnows in natural ecosystems, and Mother Nature replenishes that because she has the ways that she can do that naturally. In our soil, diversity is also going to always be winnowing as it gets self-selected for in large part by the plant. So especially if new conditions are encountered, we want to re-inject that diversity back into the soil. Does that work? Yep. Okay, great. Thanks, Wally. That's awesome. Appreciate it. And glad to see you here. Thanks for joining us at most of these sessions, I think. Kat, anything else?
And then, yeah, we have a question from Sue. Which of your products are temperature sensitive? I know some can't be frozen. And do the worm castings affect soil acidity?
Cool. So that's correct. We recommend that our products are not left to freeze, and that's because not all of the microbial life can manage that freeze thaw cycle. So you're going to be reducing the efficacy of your product. So all our products that are biological inoculants would qualify for that. So the only one, correct me if I'm wrong, Kat, but the wood chips are not a biological inoculant. They're a carbon source. They're a mulch. So they could freeze. That wouldn't be a problem. I think that's the only one because everything else is chock-a-block with the microbes. So that's that. And then the other thing also to say there is even rapid temperature changes should be avoided. So, for example, you wouldn't want it to be, in your warm house, and then, put it out in your garage where it's only a couple degrees above zero. You kind of want to climatize it. Again, it's just, in Mother Nature, we don't see huge changes in temperature. So ideally, we don't want to do that to our microbes. It's the slow temperature changes they can handle a bit better. And in terms of the pH or the acidity, yes. So one of the benefits of worm manure or biochar, which has the worm manure in it, is that it naturally corrects pH to a more neutral level, so closer to 7. Most plants like it a little bit lower, sort of between 6.5 and 7. At the end of the day, what's happening, of course, is those microbes have quite a bit of ability to influence the pH levels. And so the one exception there would be, it wouldn't be suitable for anywhere where you're trying to grow really acidic or grow plants that require high acidity levels. So like blueberries, I believe, require high acidity level soils. Right. So yeah, Sue already knows that. So that would be a case where adding worm manure could actually counteract a little bit because it could be bringing it more towards a neutral pH. Okay, so is that it? Yeah, no problem, no problem. So, I guess we got 10 minutes left. Does anybody else have any questions? Does anybody have questions for Kat? Because I know everyone putting her on the spot here, which she loves. I know everyone really enjoyed last week's herb workshop, and we didn't quite have time for everything. Um, but again, I really want to appreciate you guys for coming out. And if you have ideas about what you would like from this group, we heard from Sue that she's interested in an opportunity to sort of know in advance what the topic is and be able to sort of think through what some questions would be, and to be able to sort of ask those maybe in a more interactive format. Another thought was around, did we want to pick this back up sort of in the fall, for example, and look at how we work regeneratively in the fall with our growing spaces, or is it more of a winter thing when people have more time? And then additionally, are there specific topics that we didn't get to? I know pests, for example, was one we never got a chance to talk to, and it maybe needs a little bit more than than 40 minutes. But if you have ideas, please either email me, email Kat, and we'll see what we can do. And on that note, I'm going to say thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your lunch break, and we'll see you soon. Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you so
you.
much.
Thank you. That was great.
Be well,
Thank you.
everyone.
I was gonna have a question. I don't know where the chat is.
Oh, hey, how's it going, Jane?
I'm okay, thank you. I was wondering what is the best grass for drought, and they can take drought and rain because the weather's changing so much, and we use a lot of water, and water prices are high, and then we got shaded areas, not shaded areas. I was telling my sister about the white clover, but she's allergic to bees quite a bit, so white clover is out for grass.
I was gonna, because that's usually one, right, Kat? That's a good one.
So I was wondering, what's the next would you suggest that looks nice and doesn't go wild? And
Have you, I mean, is there other types of clovers? I don't know, Kat, do you know what's
some other ground covers, like there's even some creeping thymes that are really beautiful, and I don't know how much they attract bees. There might be some that don't really flower as often. Otherwise, there are some native grasses, but they're usually taller, so you can't mow them too short. And they're usually, in bushes or clumps. So that's the other option is instead of having a lawn, having a few sets of native grasses that are then interspersed with some gravel or mulch.
okay.
I've seen that done before. And a few friends of ours, Sustainable Roots Ecological Restoration, they have a few examples of that where they've transformed people's lawns into complete native plants. And you can choose your plants. You can say you don't want any flowering plants to not attract the bees. And yeah, they're really great with those types of projects.
I was wondering what about, I was looking on the internet, they have other types of grass like Kentucky bluegrass, they have tall ficus, buffalo grass, beer grass, whatever that is. Which one of those? Do you know anything about those grasses?
Yeah, a few of those are native and drought tolerant. I don't know off the top of my head which ones are those, but I know there's also a website. I can send it in the chat, and that has really great list of all the native grasses and which ones are drought tolerant specifically.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. That was great. You did an amazing job. I was away a lot, can't help it. And I enjoyed it immensely. Thank you.
Great. Actually, yeah, Jane, I'll send it to you in an email.
Okay, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much again.
Okay.
Take care.
Thanks,
Thank you
Jane.
for the hug. I like that hug. You gave me a hug once.
Yeah, at the Evergreen. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, come see me again soon, and we'll have another hug.
Okay, thank you. Take care,
All
guys.
right. Have a good afternoon. Bye.